dad was a super patriot. I get it from my father and mother. If they were alive today, seeing what's going on with the Marxist Islamist left and the neo-fascist right, they would be stunned. And then to be honest with you, to have people say, go back to Israel, or deport Mark, or Mark's not America first, really turns my stomach. I want these people to know, I'm going to defeat you. It's just a matter of time. And you will always be remembered as the jackasses you are. Welcome to what is the 162nd anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Now, I suspect you didn't know that, and I suspect nobody in broadcasting, whether it's digital, network, or cable, have told you that. And that's part of the problem. We don't talk about history anymore. These anniversaries don't mean anything anymore. And so a lot of young people, what do you mean Hitler was bad? Huh? I thought it was Churchill. Anyway, so that's what we're dealing with. But not here on Levin TV. We like our history, American history. The Gettysburg Address is one of the greatest speeches ever given by anybody. And it was very short. Matter of fact, after Lincoln gave the speech, he thought he blew it. The gentleman who spoke before him, also a favorite orator, had spoken for like an hour. And then Lincoln got up and gave a speech that was very short, a couple of minutes. But I want to tell you a little story as we discuss this on the 162nd anniversary. My father wrote a book, as many of you know, Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address Illustrated. He wrote it for young people. His original version, I believe, came out in 1965. He did the same book, but he did it for adults. And I want to go through this with you a little bit so we have some perspective and the history. And I said in the preface to his book, the more recent book, on July 4th, 1937, my father Jack, then 12 years old, and a neighborhood buddy walked several miles from their homes to the parade route where the city of Philadelphia was celebrating our nation's founding. The route stretched from Center City, Philadelphia, not far from Independence Hall, to the Philadelphia Art Museum, which Sylvester Stallone would make famous in the Rocky movies nearly 40 years later. One of the dignitaries to the parade caught my father's attention, a Civil War veteran. Now think about this. It's 1937. You have Civil War veterans who are still alive. My father's 100th birthday would have been last June. So these are the generational things that matter so much that we're losing today. Now this Civil War veteran, he sat on the back of a four-door convertible dressed in his old Union uniform, including his campaign hat. Behind him marched a small group of Spanish-American War veterans. And how many people even know what that's about? We just don't teach these things anymore. But of all the soldiers, veterans, and marching bands my father saw that day, the Union soldier stood out. Young Jack had read somewhat about the Civil War in school, but seeing that soldier in the flesh intrigued him. The soldier would become seared in my father's mind, in fact, to the point of where he would tell me this story, which I put in the preface when he wrote this version of the book for younger people. The most costly war in American history had become real to him, to my father. Thus began my father's lifelong journey of self-education and patriotic preaching about this great nation's history and founding principles. He was a college graduate, but he was not a history student or political science student. He was more of an art student and that sort of thing. But this is really what motivated him for the rest of his life, to just read a lot of history and write about it and talk about it. At a young age, Jack had a knack for drawing, designing, and inventing. When he was 13, he designed an automobile window invention for a contest the Philadelphia Daily News was conducting in conjunction with the release of the movie Young Tom Edison, starring Mickey Rooney. You know what he invented, my father? Again, most people won't know. In these older cars, they had a window, but they also had this side window that you could have. Triangle. That's what he drew. Really? 1930, whatever it was. He was one of only 5 winners citywide and earned a trip to the 1939 New York World's Fair. At 15, my father, by the way, was dirt poor. His whole family was dirt poor. When he was a kid, his mother worked at the cigar factory a mile away from where they were living. When my father would finish school, he would walk to the cigar factory. He'd work there till midnight, 1 in the morning to help, provide for his family. This is what I mean about this. Rich versus poor, rich versus poor. So many people in this country, freedom is what drove them, opportunity, the desire to be successful. It doesn't happen when you're 20 years old and then all of a sudden, oh, look at me. I should be a CEO. I should have a house by now. It doesn't work that way anywhere. Anyway, at 15, my father submitted an idea with drawings for animating the story A Christmas Carol to the Walt Disney Studio in California. The studio loved it and asked that he provide more examples of his work, including humorous cartoon drawings, which he did. They next contacted Jack's parents and asked whether they would allow my father to join Disney Studio. They would provide him with dormitory space and schooling at their facility while he was working for them, but his parents, concerned about his age, turned down the offer. My father grew up during the Great Depression. His family was very poor, as I indicated. His father, Harry, worked at part-time jobs when he could find them. His mother, Sarah, worked at the cigar factory. Jack was the eldest of 4 children and the only boy. When he turned 16, after the school day ended, he would walk to the cigar factory where he worked until midnight, earning the going rate of $17 a week. The weekends, my father took freelance jobs with furniture frame manufacturers, sketching frames to upholster sofas and chairs. He's paid $2 for a set of 3 drawings. The manufacturers, salesmen, used the finished drawings with their customers. A few months later, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Jack spent the summer working at the Cramps shipyard, the Philadelphia shipyard, where they built destroyers and submarines. They don't do it anymore. That's part of the problem. But he wanted to do more for the war effort, and like so many wonderful young men at the time, my father decided to enlist in the armed forces. He wanted to be a cadet in the Army Air Corps, which today we know as the Air Force. But Jack was only 17. He was too young. So he secured a copy of his birth certificate from City Hall in Philadelphia. He rubbed out the 5 in 1925, his birth year, and wrote in 4. Just like that, he had reached the legal age of 18. Now, if he could pass the rigorous Air Corps exam, he was in. And remember, he was only 17 years old. 10 would-be cadets took the exam, including students from the University of Pennsylvania, but only 4 passed, including my father. Not long thereafter, as my father was boarding a train to Biloxi, Mississippi. It's a whole other story to have a Jewish guy in Biloxi, Mississippi at the time, but that for another day. For basic training, a soldier stopped him and told him the lieutenant wanted to see him. So there he's sitting on the train with all the others, and a soldier says to my father, the lieutenant wants to see you. The lieutenant, who had taken a close look at the birth certificate, asked Jack how old he was. He saw he had changed the date. Jack told him the truth. The lieutenant wasn't very happy about it, but he told my father when he turned 18 he could join up. A week after he turned 18, he did. And while in the service, Jack would use brief respites to draw cartoons, which were published in a variety of newspapers. After the war, my father worked for a company making displays for store windows and trade shows. What does this have to do with Gettysburg? I'm getting there. Around this time, he met a beautiful young lady, Norma Rubin. The next morning, Jack told his mother that one day he would marry her. Norma headed to Syracuse University, and so did Jack, with the help of the GI Bill. He earned his room and board by working in the cafeteria. But Jack's love of art and history would lure him back to his hometown of Philadelphia. And after much pleading by Jack, Norma returned with him, and they were soon married. And Norma was a brilliant student. She graduated from Arcadia University with a Bachelor of Science degree and began teaching 4th and 5th graders in public school. Jack enrolled in the Philadelphia College of Art. He majored in advertising and began experimenting with new ideas, in particular, unique drawings and images of clowns. He created a new concept at the time, using only hands and faces to convey ideas and messages, which he turned into a cartoon strip called, remarkably enough, Hands and Faces. The comic strip was so original, it was picked up by General Features Syndicate. You guys didn't know any of this, did you? And published in newspapers throughout the United States. It was now the mid-1950s. My parents, who were always independent and entrepreneurial at heart, and that's how they raised their kids. They never took a government check. He did the GI Bill, but that was it. And I guess Social Security and Medicare. Decided to start their own small business, a preschool and summer day camp they named Hawthorne Country Day School and Camp. They had little money. They couldn't afford an architect to design the facilities. But like millions of others who pursued the American dream before them and since, they had initiative and ingenuity and were willing to work hard as needed to succeed. And this is what's lost, I think, on a younger generation today. Hey, I can't afford this over here. I can't afford this over there. Those words would never have come out of the mouth of my parents. Never, ever, ever. Nothing they felt was granted to them. You had to go get it. Norma developed the curriculum for the preschool, hired a teacher to assist her, and oversaw everything from the meals to cleanup. They did this all in a Rambler, a house, where we lived in one corner of the house. And they set up 2 rooms as classrooms and used the kitchen to help feed the kids that were there and so forth and so on. And as we were born, little babies, little kids, we were in the other room and would sleep at night. And then, of course, we would be integrated into everything that was going on. She did all the cooking, all the dishes, all the menus. They had what at the time it was called a mimeograph machine. Every week, what they were going to do in the nursery school, the meals, when they, in the summertime, we couldn't afford not to make money, so they had the day camp. I'm just cutting. My father would get up at 5:30 in the morning with our station wagon. He would pick kids up all throughout Philadelphia to bring them to the camp. They had counselors, of course. They didn't make very much. They also served as drivers. You couldn't do that today. They would never allow all this, people using station wagons and cars to pick up campers to bring them to camp. And others would come too. And it became not wildly successful. It was always small. But it put food on the table. They worked hard as hell. Every weekend when it wasn't snowing, my father, on a 2-acre, he would take a push mower and mow the whole thing. The 2 swimming pools that they put in place for the campers. He did the whole thing. He stripped them down. He painted them every single year. The materials were they were different back then than they are today, where you don't have to do that. Well, he had to do it. All that stuff. They had a playground area with all kinds of swings and everything else. My father built every swing. Everything that they were there. He built the benches and the picnic tables for what we would call the areas. Each counselor group would have every single thing they did. My father designed the school building. It wasn't hard because it was our house. It was part living quarters for the family, part classroom for the preschool. He designed and built the wooden desks and chairs, even the wooden toys. He wasn't trained in this, he just did it. And he was excellent at it. So he was a man of the mind, not a trained man of the mind, an intellectual, but a self-taught scholar in many ways, and a man who knew how to use his hands because he must. There was a big fence, I remember, wooden fence on the street because of this 2 acres land. Every single year, he and his father would paint that fence. There was no stop to it. My parents worked 16 to 20 hours a day. My father had to drop his comic strip. He couldn't do the comic strip and keep doing all the rest of this stuff. It ran for 3 years. I tell you, he would have been famous with these comic strips, but he had to stop. So in the meantime, in 1955, my mother gave birth to her first baby, my brother Doug, followed by me, and followed by our younger brother. 3 sons grew up in this incredible family and so forth. And you can read all this on your own if you wish. I wanted to explain it and how he got to the point of doing a book on Gettysburg. Gettysburg. My dad was a super patriot, and he passed that on to his children. I get it from my father and mother. If they were alive today, seeing what's going on with the Marxist Islamist left and the neo-fascist right, they would be stunned. With the rise of anti-Semitism, given the fact that my father served in the military in World War II, and my mother's father was at Iwo Jima in Guam, great-uncle, my great-uncle, was at Guadalcanal as well. To see this And then to be honest with you, to have people say, go back to Israel, or deport Mark, or Mark's not America first, really turns my stomach. I want these people to know, I'm going to defeat you. It's just a matter of time. And you will always be remembered as the jackasses you are. And you will not be able to wash that off your skin. You won't. That scarlet letter's with you forever.
For all this and much more, sign up for Levin TV.